Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. Getting back to work on the Cobra this week. Last video got the heater system all sorted out as far as the hoses and control valves, and also got the alternator installed as far as the brackets, the belt, and did some cleanup work with the wiring and everything in the front end. This week it is time to get to work on the remaining cooling hoses as far as getting the lower and the upper plumb to the radiator, and then it's going to be pretty much just plugging in some wiring, getting everything hooked up. Getting that much closer to getting the ECU programmed, and hopefully this thing coming back to life. So that being said, going to get the camera turned around and get back to work on the car, starting with the cooling system. All right, so starting with the cooling system, I went over this in a prior video a little bit, but just going to revisit real quick. These are the hoses I pulled out. This is the one that goes from the water pump to the coupler. This is basically a stock hose as far as I know. There's an aluminum coupler. Then there's this funky hose, which is out of, I think, an 84 Buick Century with a V6 off the top of my head. It's actually no longer made, can't find it anymore, unless you find some auto parts store which has some old stock sitting around, which thankfully I did, and snagged 2 of them off of eBay. So I'm replacing, this one actually felt pretty stiff still. It didn't feel too bad, whereas this was really spongy, and then that coupler is all corroded and eaten away. So I have new coupler. I bought these 2 lower hoses, and I actually already have the other one loosely installed on the water pump there. So I'm gonna go ahead and start working on getting a new S hose, or whatever you wanna call it, installed on the radiator lower outlets, and then I can get everything coupled together and call the lower hose done. And that was way easier than I thought it would be. Everything's installed and clamped down. Based on some of the previous hoses I tried to use and get on this radiator, I thought it'd have a lot more problem, but yeah, this one slipped right onto the neck. So you can see everything's clamped down. This hose here already had a spring in it. The second hose did not have a spring. I don't know if it came with one and I pulled it out when I was messing around with this previously. I can't remember. But I had the springs from the old setup, so I just went ahead and put one in there. So there's a spring here so it won't collapse. And then the coupler is right there with the 2 clamps on it as well. I may see if I have a cushion clamp that's big enough and just do a cushion clamp to hold this to this crossmember piece somewhere, just so it's not flopping around and whatnot. Just, kind of clean things up a little bit. Being at the filter housings right there, it's pretty close. So, but yeah, lower hose done, and next will be the upper hose. All right, so as you can see, the old hose for the upper is still actually in place. It goes through there, and then it comes back around and connects into the radiator there, and there's like a little extension pipe that connects the 2 ends. I have a new hose right here that I need to go ahead and cut and make work. So I'm gonna go ahead, get the old one pulled out, figure out where I need to cut this, get it all cinched together, and get it reinstalled. All right, well, that was a much bigger pain than it should have been because this clamp ended up being stripped, so I had to basically just kind of bend and work this off of the radiator, but finally got it. So there's 2 pieces of rubber. I need to cut something to match that, and then we've got the pipe that connects them. I've got 4 new clamps to use, so I'm gonna go ahead and get to trimming and get this all set up. All right, so I already have the elbow portion in cut with that spacer, and then I replicated this piece by cutting, this out of the remaining portion of that single hose. So I'm gonna go ahead and get this installed with clamps, and we will be done with the upper hose. All right, and final results. Hose is in. You can see it's connected there on the puke tank and over there. And then from the wheel well, again, using that same metal tube, but 2 new lengths of hose cut out of that one donor hose, which was Daco 70548. So upper and lower cooling hoses are done. That should be it as far as plumbing the cooling system. I think next on the list, I need to get spark plugs installed, and then it'll be getting all the wires and everything hooked up for the fuel injection system. All right, so these are the spark plugs I'm using. These are one of the recommended brands by TrickFlow. I'm gonna go ahead and gap them to 0.045. That seems to be a pretty good recommendation for an all motor 302 with these heads on it. And then get them all installed. We'll definitely put anti-seize on all of the threads because steel plugs going into aluminum heads, don't want to have to worry about galvanic corrosion. So I'm gonna go ahead, get to work, get these things all gapped and installed, and then I'll be back with the next task on the list. All right, spark plugs are in. You can see them passenger side, which took like all of a couple of minutes, much easier than doing driver's side, because driver's side, they're all facing towards the rear and you definitely have a tight space, but they're all in. All the spark plugs are, like I said, I gapped them to 45 and got them torqued down, and I did use anti-seize on the threads. So now that that's done, I'm gonna go ahead and I need to reinstall the distributor. Before I do that, I'm gonna grab a primer for my drill, get the oil pressure primed, then I'll get the distributor put in. All right, here is the primer tool installed in the drill. It's just the end engages the oil pump shaft that would normally hook to the bottom of the distributor gear, and it's got a little sleeve that just slides to fill the hole to try and keep anything from blowing outward and keep it centered where it needs to be. Kind of acts as a bushing. 5-liter Mustang counterclockwise rotation on the distributor, so make sure you have the drill set to the proper rotation. So I'm gonna go ahead, get this in the hole, spin it up, get some oil pressure built up for a little while, and then I can go ahead and get the distributor put in. All right, was running it. You can see the oil pressure is kind of slowly coming back down now after running for a little while. So yeah, got some good pressure built up after a while of running, so that should get some oil just circulated where all the bearings are and everything, and then I can go ahead. Once I have everything ready to try and crank it, I'll definitely crank it without any fuel or the EFI turned on, just to get everything spooled back up again right before that time. But I need to get the distributor in before I can put the turkey pan and stuff on, so I just needed to do this first. All right, so next is reinstalling the distributor. Per the instructions, you need to set it at 12 degrees before top dead center for number 1 on the compression stroke, which I should have the engine there. I'll just double check real quick. I think I had it right around there. It might actually be just at top dead center. I can back it off to the 12 degrees. And then the number 1 on this, I had to take the cap and everything off to clear my purge tank there, surge tank. But number 1 is the squared off peg right there where the cap would bolt on. The round is exactly opposite of it. So that is the number 1, and you can see the pickups there as well. So I need to set it so the rotor is pointed right there at 12 degrees before top dead center. So I'm gonna go ahead and start messing around and get this installed. All right, distributor is in. You can see it's lined up with what would be the number 1 position to fire. And I don't know if I can get around to the other side from here, but it's set to 12 degrees right there. So good to go. I'm gonna put the rest of the distributor stuff on, and then I can run the wires, get that all hooked up, put them in the retainers and everything, and then this will be done. And here you go. Got the distributor cap in, all the wires are in both sides. I have the little retainers that are made for the Ford Racing wires, the larger size. So everything is hooked up and wired in as far as the plugs go. Just cranked it since it's all bolted in and the distributor's in place, just to make sure good oil pressure, good cranking, all that stuff. Nothing sounded funny or anything like that under the starter load, and yeah, sounded good. Sounds like I've got good compression. So yeah, it's really a couple things left. I need to get the intake set up, all put back together as far as turkey pan, get everything plugged back in, make some final adjustments there. Clamps on the heater core lines, put some coolant in it, double check the oil and everything, and yeah, getting much closer to programming the ECU and trying to get this thing to fire up. Working on tying up just last things. I do have I made 2 hose coupler just to kind of keep this together as far as the heater core lines go. I also went ahead and ran some vacuum fitting from the fuel pressure regulator, and then this will plug into the throttle body on the front. That's where the right size barb is for that. Started messing around the PCV. I have the original style hose and clamp just for looks purposes, but that is a 1/2 inch on that end, whereas the biggest barb I have here is a 3/8. So I went ahead and ordered a coupler that's due here tomorrow, so I can splice a piece of 3/8 hose to that 1/2 inch that'll be underneath the turkey pan. But I think that's about it. I think there's one more vacuum line I need to work out, and that's going to be the one that goes to control the heater unit. The hose is there underneath the stanchion for the throttle linkage coming out of the firewall. So that, I think, is really the last thing I need to get figured out before I can put the turkey pan on and then start plugging everything in. So I'm going to get that taken care of, and then it's just waiting to get the barb in tomorrow, and then I should be able to finish everything up as far as assembly. And the turkey pan is now kind of put in place. I've got the throttle body loosely on top of it, started kind of running the wires where they're going to need to go, moving things around just for fitment purposes, double checking like wire or hose barbs, things like that. I'm gonna have to run the PCV actually to the front one. I'm probably gonna bring it up through that hole there that the connector's on top of, just because this back one's got wiring coming through it. It's pretty full. And then, yeah, the fuel, I have a plug on the fuel port that I'm going to use just because I have to set the initial pressure with the vacuum line unhooked. And then the line that I created for the heat HVAC is back there, just draped over, and then I'll plug that in later. So yeah, coming along. So basically right now I'm waiting on the barb so I can finish off the PCV system, get that all connected. I also need to figure out what I'm going to do with the air temperature sensor, because I had that spacer that went between the air filter and this that I had originally put it in. Not happy with that, just don't like how it looks. It puts the filter up too high. So I got a couple things in my head that I might try with it and make it work. So I'm going to get the parts in and I'll come back tomorrow. Next day, still waiting on that adapter for the junction fitting to get the PCV line done. But I went ahead and made some other changes here. I moved and adjusted that clamp I'd put together, because before, when it was the other way, the back end of that screw was jabbing on top of the valve cover. I didn't want that. So relocated that, went ahead, filled the coolant up. So that's like a little over halfway full in the overflow tank, and it's not taking anymore. Obviously it'll suck some down when I finally start this, but at least that's done. And then in the turkey pan, I got everything tightened down as far as the throttle bracket or the throttle body goes, and also reran some of the lines. They were all coming up that hole there. When I remove this, you'll see I now have them coming up here. And then I figured out my temp sensor, what I wanted to do with it. I didn't like that 1-inch spacer I had between the bottom of the filter and the top of the throttle body, but I also wanted it to be somewhat protected from the elements, just in case I run into rain or anything. Again, don't ever plan on driving this in the rain. So I cut and made a little bracket out of some spare aluminum I had laying around. So it's there, and it's actually nicely hidden. When the air cleaner assembly is on, you really don't see it. And also with having those wires come up there, most of them are hidden now, so it just makes it a much cleaner assembly here in the turkey pan. So that vacuum line will go where the plug is once the fuel pressure is set, and then there'll be one more vacuum for the PCV once I get that adapter coming around and going into the open exposed one there in the front. But that is about it. So I really think that's the last thing I'm waiting for, is just the piece I need to get the PCV line finalized, and then once that's done, it will be time to program the ECU and get this thing fired. Update time, next day, and my fitting for the PCV came in. So I did route it off the back just because it was easier to get the hose spliced there and come through here versus trying to wrap it around off that front one. Just ran out of space there, so you can see I have it snaked here. I still have to put the clamp down on the bottom. But yeah, so that is it. And looking everything over, I think that really is it as far as prep for running goes. Plugs are in. I just have to check fluids real quick, and then it should be ready to move into that phase. So I'm probably gonna end this video here. Next video we'll start up with making sure I'll get all the fluids checked and everything, and then it's gonna be walking through setting up the ECU, getting that ready to fire, and then checking fuel pressure, getting that set for the initial fuel pressure rate, and then hopefully this thing comes to life. So if you're interested in following along, seeing what happens, please hit like, please hit subscribe, please hit the notification bell. All those things do help with the algorithm and would be appreciated. If you have any questions or comments, leave them in the comment section below. I do review them, I will respond, and those help with the algorithm as well. Thank you very much for watching and have a great day.